Welcome to the 11th of Decem-Baron 2020. So, back with another Dungeons & Dragons story, with another fun campaign that I was really happy about. This campaign was titled Call of the Grimwild, Blood, Smoke, and Mirrors. This entire campaign began when I discovered a PDF file online. Now, well, it's basically like this cool, like, sort of homebrew thing, right? Now, there's all kinds of, like, homebrew monsters and adventures and, all kinds of things that people have found, right? But there was one that I found a number of years ago that was called Grimmdark, with two M's in Grimm. Grimmdark, a book of fairy tales. Essentially, it was a collection of Fey lore for Dungeons & Dragons. If you wanted a Grimm's Fairy Tales style, if you wanted some Grimm's Fairy Tale flavor in your Dungeons & Dragons campaign, this would be a good document for that. Now, it was made, I don't know exactly the year, but it was a fan project made by a group of people called A Point of Inspiration, which disbanded a number of years ago. But you can still find a Reddit post that has a link to it. I will post a link to that Reddit post as well as the actual link to this document because it was offered for free entirely. The Reddit post has like two links in it. The first one is meant to take you to apointofinspiration.com, which is not what it is anymore. Don't click on that. It's just like either it's not owned anymore, it's something different, I don't know. But there's an edit at the very end of the original Reddit post that says because A Point of Inspiration is disbanded, the site is down, and it has a direct link there. And I will share that link in the description as well for reference. But essentially, I'm looking over it right now. There's a bunch of it explains what a fairy tale is. It has fairy tale themed plot hooks. There's an inn and tavern and NPCs to meet in there, sort of an entry point. There are different monsters, Jabberwockies, Biglywhiffs, Gremlins, Nymphs, Tooth Fairies, really interesting Tooth Fairies, and a lot of character options. So a few new races, such as you could be a Feywild, you could be a Siren. There are also different class archetypes. For example, College of Hysteria for Bard. There's a huntsman archetype for the blood hunters. There was wild trotters for rangers. You could have, as a sorceress origin, fairy tale. You could have dark imagination as a warlock patron. There was the tradition of the school of the cauldron for wizards, and a bunch of miscellaneous magics, backgrounds, feats, magical items, all these kinds of things. But what really captured my imagination were these three cursed queens. And these were essentially very powerful bosses. Between challenge rating 15 to 19, maybe 21 or something. I'll read some of the sort of explanation that they have in here about these individuals inside the document. In every fairy tale, in every world, there is always a common theme, and there is always some sort of magical guide that helps him or her along her journey. But what most do not think to question is, what are these young heroes actually being guided to? What happens when a would-be hero turns down the help of their guide? The answer is simple. They become cursed. By the whims of powerful Fae, their hearts are tainted, their souls blackened, and their destinies twisted forever. They are forced to learn the humility of their actions, lest they face total destruction. There's a little more information in there, but I'll also go down to a DM note titled The Game of Chess. The queens are meant to be mid to high level antagonists in your adventures and often work best when pitted against powerful archfey in the plot. For the evil aligned character, they can be powerful allies or even guides bent on the destruction of the party or the Fae, your choice. They will, more often than not, keep their hands clean while mildly forcing their wills onto the players. So, first of all, this leads into the explanation of the title I gave to this campaign, called The Grimwild, Blood, Smoke, and Mirrors. First of all, Grimwild. So in typical Dungeons and Dragons lore, there are different planes of existence. The real world, like, well, not our world, but the world of Dungeons and Dragons, like where most adventures take place, is called the material plane. That is like Earth, or like a normal fantasy world, right? There are lots of outer planes and inner planes and elemental planes and all that, and there are a few planes that run parallel to the material plane. One of them is the Feywild, and basically this is a place where like fairies, fey creatures, elves come from there. Well, elves' ancestors come from there. It is a place of chaos and high emotion. And then opposite of that is the Shadowfell. It's a very dreary, awful place with all emotion, happiness, anything is just sapped from the place, and it's just dark, dreary despair is all it is. So, material plane with the Feywild and the Shadowfell. So what I imagined was that, something from the Shadowfell would influence the Feywild and corrupt it, turning the Feywild into the Grimwild. And then that same individual from the Shadowfell creating the Grimwild would want that Grimwild influence, would want to extend it into the material plane. And so that big bad was acquainted with a coven of hags, 3 hags. And those hags were able to bring these 3 cursed queens from the Grimwild into the material plane. Their castle, a castle of gray stone and ash, was transported into a mountain range. Another castle was transported next to a coastal port town, and the final one deep in a forest. So the one out in the mountains was Arcadia, Queen of Ashes. The one out by the coast was Sable, Queen of Blood Debts. And the one in the forest was Valdos, Queen of Mirrors. So, Call of the Grimwild, Blood, Smoke, and Mirrors. And yeah, so essentially the whole campaign revolved around this idea of these 3 cursed queens, invading upon the material plane, which, by the way, I used the same world as the one I created for Here There Be Science, Here There Be Dragons, as well as A Brief Recess Beneath the Rubble, except back in time. It wasn't steampunk. I wanted to keep to the more like fantasy things without like technology. So yeah, I don't really have like notes exactly. Well, I do. It's more like I wrote a bunch of rhymes and poems and different things for this campaign, and I have those, and I'll read those, and I'll give some a little bit of context as to some of the stuff that was happening. Essentially, the party started at a humble place and like in Wosington or whatever, and they found a few small issues here and there that they would try to solve, and that as they leveled up and got stronger, they would confront the actual cursed queens, and then finally they would confront the coven of hags who were responsible for this, and then at the very end they would confront the boss of the hags, which was an evil archfey named Cuin. There was also a chaotic good archfey named Dwarend. So those I'll get into those. They were like sort of end game characters, but and I made an extra effort to I always try to weave characters' backstories into the campaign. For example, one of the players of this particular campaign, she had a sister who was missing, and I decided that sister would be one of the hags in the coven. And so, her name was originally Mary, and so as a hag, as a sea hag, she was known as Muddy Mary. So quite a bit of drama there. But there's another character. One of the other player characters was Cora of the Yellow Cloak clan. This was a half-orc barbarian, I believe, and Cora was very proud of his Yellow Cloak clan, even though he's like the last of his clan. And I figured it'd be fun to have several like orc clans named after colored objects that are just not there anymore. So one time the Cora Barks player could not make it to a session, and so I decided to have a little fun with this and sent him this as a message to kind of explain why Cora Bark was absent from that particular bit of the adventure. So here we go. Here's what I sent him at the time. So here's my idea for Cora Bark's inactivity this session. As the party is getting ready to leave Muddy Mary's ship lair, Cora Bark notices a yellow handkerchief on a shelf. It would make a fine bandana, he thought, as he wrapped it around his face. He realizes the cloth has a strange odor, like a mixture of cold sweat and home. He is overcome by the stench and falls unconscious. While in this state, he sees a vision. Cora Bark sees a yellow cloak waving in an ash-filled breeze. Next to it are several other objects: a green dagger, a red tree stump, a black boot, and a blue eyeball. All symbols of other orc clans from the northern plains. They all lie in a pile of ash. Footsteps in the earth lead to a terrifying horde of undead orcs and half-orcs from the various clans, led by a tall figure in a soiled gray wizard's cloak. The vision follows the unlively parade up the western mountains to eventually stop at the base of a huge dragon skull. Out of the skull, a wintry hag appears, giving the cloaked figure a sinister, toothy grin. The figure takes back their hood to reveal the ugly face of a bugbear. The bugbear bows his head and gestures for his horde to step forward. The hag leads the zombies into her skull lair. Though fitting them all inside would be impossible, each undead orc enters. An explosion of fire and ash from inside the skull accompanies the entry of each of the undead. The bugbear remains silent throughout. The last thing Cora Bark could witness was the bugbear falling to his knees on the dirty snow and place his hands on his face as his shoulders shudder. And then darkness clouds the vision. So essentially, this wintry hag was another of the three hags in the coven. The final one, the boss base of the three, were in the forest, essentially. So I had one out on the coast by where Sable, the Queen of Blood Debts, was, one out in the mountains where Arcadia, the Queen of Ashes, was, and one in the forest where Valdos, the Queen of Mirrors, was. And so there was all of that. I had an interesting little story with that bugbear. Like, he used to be an elf, and he was turned into a bugbear, and he was serving this hag and everything, and so on and so forth. I mentioned that I had a bunch of different rhymes and things, and I'll read them each to you and try to give the context that I remember for them. But yeah, there's lots of little adventures and things like that, especially in the port city. There are all kinds of, like, trying to investigate. There was this weird, sickness that was happening because of Sable, Queen of Blood Debts, and everything. I tried to take cues from Shakespeare here and there. If I gave myself more time to prepare the Shakespearean references, I would have because I wanted to keep the sort of literature thing going that I had for this particular world, and I didn't succeed all that well. I only had a couple of passing references. I tried to put a reference to the Tempest, a reference or two to the Tempest in Arcadia's castle. The only one I could remember, or that. Anyway, there was an exit pursued by bear instance in there. But anyway, there was one time where they let's see. There was one time where the party was about to meet an evil hag named Auntie Ursula. They actually thought they were going to meet the evil hag Auntie Ursula. They were being led by a fairy dragon that they found in the forest named Frick, F-R-Y-K. Frick was like, "Oh yeah, I know a hag. I'll take you to meet her and everything." And the party's expecting "Oh, we're going to meet this evil hag," right? This was early in the campaign. In fact, actually, the fairy dragon Frick was actually leading them to Ursula's good-hearted sister, Auntie Ariel. Yeah, Ursula Ariel. Yeah. Anyway, I made this rhyme for that. Over the river and through the wood to Auntie's house we go. See, Frick knows the way, at least that's what they say, with anxious ones in tow. Travel the woodland of Ursenbrush, for answers she may know. They're off and away, come fiend or fay, come terror, weal or woe. And so basically, I think this was a rhyme that Frick the fairy dragon was kind of like singing. So yeah, there was that. And the party had kind of a surprise when they realized that the hag that they actually met was a good one and an ally, essentially. So the three Cursed Queens castles didn't appear at the very beginning. There was sort of a ritual that happened like early on, and here's the rhyme I made for that. Triple, triple, hag and castle, they erupt to cause kerfuffle. To the simple and mundane, they'll let chaos pour and rain. And that is at the point where the three castles materialize in the different places on the continent. A song that the party hears as they start to go to the Wintry Hag's lair in the mountains. The Wintry Hag was named Ella Cindersoot. I was kind of, this was Ella Cindersoot sort of messing with the characters essentially. But it goes like this. She'll be burning down the mountain when she comes, ow, hot. She'll be burning down the mountain when she comes, ow, hot. She'll be burning down the mountain, we'll be burning down the mountain, she'll be burning down the mountain when she comes, ow, hot. I had a bunch of verses. I'm going to read each of the subsequent verses once each. I don't want to take too long here. But the next one is, all the critters will be on fire when she comes, roar, hiss. And again, this is sort of like, these are taunting things that they like the characters like hear in the ashy, snowy wind as they get closer to the hag as well as to Arcadia's castle. Then I had one for each of the characters as well. Balthor's clan will taste like ashes when she comes. And then another one, so Balthor was a dwarf. Another one was Cora Bark of the Yellow Cloak clan will be a Grey Cloak when she comes. Name change, because the Cora Bark of the Yellow Cloak clan always insisted that he be called Cora Bark of the Yellow Cloak clan instead of just Cora Bark. So Cora Bark of the Yellow Cloak clan will be a Grey Cloak when she comes. And anyway, another one is Stefan's stealth will be his downfall when she comes. Look there. Stefan was a rogue who liked to do sneak attacks and stuff like that. Lyricel's tears will fall for sister when she comes. Boo-hoo! Lyricel was the sister of the Muddy Mary character. And then finally, Cisco's bounty will come due when she comes. Pay up! Cisco, I think, was a kobold monk, I'm pretty sure. But yeah. When they arrived at Ella Cindersoot's lair, there were I had them try to like decipher a few word riddles, and I had too much fun with this. So some of you may have heard of Will Smith. So Will Smith, the actor, Will Smith, ding ding ding, the like forge and stuff like that. There are several phrases out there that actually make sense in English because words can have multiple meanings in different contexts. For example, the phrase buffalo, 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 buffalo. That is a grammatical English sentence, which basically means buffalo from buffalo, buffalo or bully, buffalo from buffalo, who also buffalo from buffalo, basically. And so I made similar word riddles. So one was will. Will's will. The riddle was to try to decipher what the meaning was, right? Because they came across a trapped prisoner who was kind of enchanted to keep repeating the same word over and over. Will's will. And the characters had to decipher that. So, there's a question is directed to Will. Will this will or give that Will's will and testament, essentially. Will's will, basically. Another one that is kind of like the buffalo one, maybe a little easier. A ship shipping ships, a ship shipping ships with a ship shipping shipping ships. So imagine boats, like large ships or boats, that, there's freight ships, right? You have all those containers on it and they carry stuff across the ocean. Imagine ships that carry other ships. So that would be a ship shipping ships. Or if you put a hyphen in it, a ship shipping ship. So a ship shipping ships with a ship shipping ship shipping ships. And then finally, this one is a bit more convoluted, but essentially, so here it is. Which, with which, witches, which witches, witches, which witches with which witches, witches, which witches. To break that down, it goes like this. What witch from a place called Witch, with which what sandwich belonging to another witch from Witch, bewitched those sandwiches belonging to the witches from Witch, and those witches from Witch bewitching other witches from Witch, with the sandwiches from witches from Witch. The sandwiches belonging to witches from Witch. It makes sense in my head, okay? English is fun. But anyway, after the characters defeated Ella Cindersoot, this rhyme came up. So it goes like this. 3 little witches scheming in a tree. One saw a light and bent her knee. Auntie and the other got more HP. 2 more witches scheming in a tree. 2 little witches scheming in a tree. One got chopped in pieces 3. Auntie felt the difference and said with glee, "Now begins the prophecy I did foresee." One evil auntie, standing in the flesh, armed with augury and gesh. She will find a sister to thrash and thresh, then mortal and fey will fully mesh. So kind of like a sort of like a portent of things. Like as you defeat the other witches, evil Auntie Ursula gets stronger. Even that's usually not how a witch's coven works, but that's how this one worked. Let's see. After there's a part where the characters went inside the mountains and they came across a group of kobolds serving a evil white dragon, and they decided to have a dance competition. And even though the characters who did this dance competition felt confident, they lost the dance competition. And so there's this. I wrote this little rhyme of this, and that's I think one of the kobolds that won said this or whatever. But yeah, Frank be nimble, Steph be quick, and yet they're outdanced by some kobold chicks. But yeah. So there was an allusion or a reference to a prophecy earlier, a couple rhymes ago. Here is that prophecy. So there is a 2-sided prophecy that foretells the arrival of the hags and queens, but also the intervention of our heroes, which was a secret to the players at that point. But here's that prophecy. 2 young witches of mortal and hag, their auntie to serve, the world to snag. One will leave, the other be cleaved, leaving grandma with no one to nag. But oh, the ruff of ash, the mitts of blood, and shard of mirror the world will flood, with grim and wild, from hush compiled, to echo this veil of mud. 5 young creatures will answer the call of Grimwild's rise with blade, bow, and gall. Blessings they glean to strike the queens, the silence is doomed to stall. O ye baleful Fey, beware the rise of ursine claw, of equine cries, of Xanthus cloak and seaside folks. Their boldness betrays their size. So there were a bunch of references there to the characters, ursine claw, equine cries, Xanthus or yellow cloak, and seaside folks. And there were a couple references to the big bad at the very end, Qin, which we're getting to. This might end up being another 50-minute video, but anyway, here we go. But yeah, so that's the prophecy, essentially. Next, I made an Ash Spangled parody, I guess is what I called it. Oh yeah. So this campaign happened during a summer, and on the 4th of July, to kind of like as I texted each of the players, to get them sort of excited for the next session. A lot of these rhymes, I generally just sort of like sent them these rhymes to kind of get them excited about the next session or the session later that day. We played on a weekly basis, as most of my campaigns end up being. So it went like this. So it kind of it uses the same rhythm as the Star Spangled Banner, the United States national anthem. It's starting with the point where, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air gave proof to the night that our flag was still there. That part, I wrote lyrics for that. And it goes like this. And Arcadia's flame blast got 'em covered in ash, and proved to the world that our heroes are rash. I'll get to each of the queens and in a little bit. I just wanted to read through some. Okay, so then I wrote one final rhyme at the very end, which I will sing for you guys a little bit later. But yeah, so what about these three queens? So again, so you can. I basically took these three queens almost entirely verbatim from the Grimmdark document, because each of these queens have really interesting backstories. There's a fair amount of reading. I won't read through them, but I will say that each of them also has some sort of artifact that, some sort of like magical item that gives them a lot of their power. Arcadia, Queen of Ashes, has a cursed choker, something that goes around her, a decorative thing that goes around her neck. A beautifully ornate piece. It's basically sealed around her neck. It doesn't choke her necessarily. It's just like stuck on her. It protects her and gives her power. She's able to do things like let's see. Let me read some of her abilities. So she has some fire spells, right? She can polymorph into an adult red dragon. She has things like Fireball, Firestorm, Fire Shield. She can do an action called Suffer. She speaks a diabolical word commanding the soot and ash around a creature of her choice. Then that person needs to make a Constitution saving throw or be suffocated by ash as it turns into concrete in their lungs. So yeah, and then there are a bunch of legendary actions such as basically like corrupting someone else's appearance to make it look like her, so to confuse people as to who is who, essentially. But yeah, just all kinds of things with like fire and ash and soot and things like that. So yeah, Sable, the Queen of Blood Debts, she has some really nasty things. She was cursed by some magical red gloves. And again, like these each have their own story. Should I read these stories? They're kind of interesting. It's going to be long enough anyway. You guys will have the document for yourself. If you want to read these tragic tales of each of these cursed queens, and I assumed that these characters were irredeemable. Essentially, they may have been redeemable at one point, but they have turned to evil. They rejected their guide, their original destiny, and they decided to remain cursed and try to cause others to suffer. They also each have lair actions, and like the region around their castles are affected by this. For example, there's like around Arcadia's castle, ash kind of fell lazily from the sky, so ash and snow mixed together in the mountains, where I put it. For Sable, let's see. So she has these magical gloves, and I put her out in the coastal area, and it was Sable's influence that caused this sort of like this nasty plague to afflict the nearby city of Sonacy for a time. When Sable was defeated, then of course Sonacy got better, but yeah, Sable has some really, really nasty stuff. Let's see. She can when she deals damage to someone with at least one level of exhaustion, they need to make a Constitution saving throw or roll on the Lingering Wounds table. She can also cast some powerful magic. False Life, Darkness, Circle of Death. She can turn her enemies into beasts, and so on and so forth. She's very skeptical to believe anyone, so it's hard to lie to her. She can summon a blood weapon in the form of a melee weapon of her choice, and she can attack with that weapon. Let's see. Yeah, a couple of nasty ones. One is called Coagulate, where she reaches out with her red gloved hand and squeezes the throat of a nearby target. Their blood would, if the character fails the saving throw, their blood would coagulate and take necrotic damage. And a really awful one is called Blood Tears, where Sable would take her gloved thumbs and press them into a target's eyes, and they must make a saving throw or be blinded and blinded for a few turns and take necrotic damage. She can also drain energy and then hit points and stuff. Yeah, really, really nasty stuff. And then finally we have Valdos, the Queen of Mirrors. The artifact is a cursed mirror with shards of this mirror are in her eyes, kind of like the original Snow Queen legend, right? And I put her lair in the forest because I like the idea of this sort of Alice in Wonderland like mirror and hedge maze sort of an idea. So yeah, stuff that she can do. She can attempt to turn somebody into glass and to kind of like freeze them and make them very fragile. She can make rose bushes kind of like bloom near her and deal poison damage with them as the branches reach out. She can also focus on someone and make shards of mirrors fly from her mouth. And then also, let's see. She has one legendary action called Eyes of All. She glances into the future using her mirrors, doubling the damage of her next attack or reducing all damage dealt to her by half until the end of her next turn, whichever comes first. So, yeah, and they all have a lot of, each have damage resistances and immunities, condition immunities, legendary resistances, just all kinds of things that, and also she has magic like Mirror Illusion, Hallucinatory Terrain, Compulsion, Clairvoyancy, Mirror Image, things like that. Really cool stuff. So, but each of these are eventually defeated. And also, like in the forest, like a bunch of creatures are turning into like mirror creatures, essentially. But yeah, eventually, each of the queens and each of the hags are defeated. And they are taken to, around that point. And so one of the characters, Lyricel, is a ranger who cares about horses and animals and the forest, like very much a nature person. And let's see. Oh yeah, Lyricel got a powerful sentient bow named Quell. And there was a point where I sent this message to the player who played as Lyricel. As the rest of the party takes pains in improving and fortifying their base inside the Kobold Caves near Wosington, Lyricel begins her usual familiar routine of the forest hunt, grateful for the assistance of her powerful bow, Quell. As her mind wanders, thinking anxiously of the battle ahead against... so the characters at this point, especially from the good Auntie Ariel, learn that they have to ultimately defeat this evil archfey character named Quen. I'll talk a little bit about Quen in a bit. But yeah, so Lyricel is thinking anxiously of the battle ahead against Quen. Her reverie is interrupted by Quell's voice in her head. Mistress Lyricel, I am grateful to be of service to you. In spite of the menial hunts, I relish the chance to extend my influence into this world. You don't quite fathom the rush I feel when I manipulate the emotions of our prey. Because of this, I have asked for nothing. Now, in this quiet calm before the echoing storm, I wish to tell you a significant, mournful tale. There once was a man, an elf, powerful, noble, and proud. He was the greatest hunter of his time, and he boldly declared that no creature could slay him. As great heroes often do, he took a wife, a human, and built a castle for the two of them. As you may expect, His fame and boasting attracted the wrong sort of attention, and this elf made many enemies among the chaotic, mischievous Fey. They whisked his wife away and enchanted his castle so he could never find it when he left to search for her. The fiendish Fey tortured the hero's wife, and her screams melding with the sounds of the forest. He became lost in his search, and his mind likewise wandered into insanity. With his sanity gone, nothing could hold him back. He proclaimed that if he couldn't have his wife's physical form near him, her voice would keep him company. With a great magic, he ripped the lungs and throat of all life in the forest, including his wife and her captors. He consumed them all, boiled them into his soul, and trapped their voices in his stomach. Thus had this powerful realm transformed into the vile realm of Echo, a place for no sane man or Fey. Many fools and wanderers have had their voices join the ominous nightly sounds of the forest. Our hero, Kewin, is still on his wild hunt. Even now, he searches for fair and beautiful things, seeking a proper replacement body for the voice of his wife. I ask Lyricel to consider the magnitude of your position. You and yours will soon approach the realm of him who claimed the tongues of angels and fought the great old ones. He inspires caution among even the greatest denizens of the plains. So, I humbly ask, dear vessel, to enter Echo not with a heart of malice against my first master, but with an open mind. I ask that you bring me to him, not with knocked arrow and bent string, but with bowed head and bent knee. Your friends do not comprehend their fate, but now you do. There is no other way. There is only the forest. There is only Kewin. And there is only surrender. Lyricel is then struck with visions of an elf hunter who carries himself with a sense of calm, serene, dignified menace. And so, yeah, that was a sort of precursor for Lyricel's player before the final episode of Call of the Grimwild, Blood, Smoke, and Mirrors. And to the rest of the players, I sent them a video of myself. I wrote new lyrics for the Simon and Garfunkel song "The Sound of Silence," and I recorded the instrumental track of the Disturbed cover by the band name called Disturbed, and I sang this. I won't play the instrumental, of course, but I will sing to you the lyrics that I wrote. And these are essentially from Kewin's point of view. As the characters are about to enter his realm of Echo and fight against him, with Kewin's former beau Quell in hand. And also Kewin had has a steed as well. Anyway, here we go. Hello, darkness, my old friend. I see you brought some prey again, led by pebbles softly creeping, and they walked in while I was sleeping, and the echoes of their footfalls in the rain still remain within my realm of silence. With spear in hand I walk alone through my halls of blackened stone. 'Neath the glory of the moonlight, I saw my witching steed was taking flight. Then my mind was struck by a thought that made me halt. But no, they won't. Not in my realm of silence. And in the muted wood I heard resolute steps and cautious words. Heroes talking without thinking. Heroes marching without fearing. Heroes with the goal to challenge what they do not know. Just goes to show why it's my realm of silence. Fools, said I, do you not see? This place is more than endless trees. I hear your words and I can reach you. Come to me and I will teach you that your words and your tongue will belong to me, as it should be, in my realm of silence. That was the preface I made to the last session of this campaign. I'm quite proud of that myself. But yeah, the characters, Qin has a stat block in this Grimdark document, along with a rather lengthy story. I summarized it in already, the hunter, driven mad and all that stuff. And, but yeah, he is challenge rating 30, which is the level of a Tarask. And the characters are not meant to fight Qin alone. But I will explain a few things that Qin has. So he has a lot of legendary resistance, damage immunities, condition immunities. He can become a warlock's patron. He's an archfey, so there's that. He has legendary hunter's mark. He has legendary magical immunity. He has a midnight steed. He has perfect hearing. He can, while in echo, he can hear anything within 60 miles of him. He has a frightful presence. He can attack 4 times in a turn with his spear. If mounted, he can use his the charge action with his horse, with his steed, and then kick his mount into a charge, and then, make 2 attacks with his spear at that point. There's another one called Echo's Echo. He can smash the end of his spear into the ground, tearing a hole between the planes. Echo flows through the hole along with a number of creatures of Qin's choice. He can travel pretty much anywhere. The spear is really damaging. It does 10d6 plus 10 magical damage, plus 5d10 necrotic damage. And Tongue Call, he can choose a creature, and they must make a tough Constitution saving throw or have their tongue ripped out and drop to 1 hit point. And then he also has layer actions and legendary actions. He is no joke. But luckily, the characters were able to have the assistance of another archfey of the chaotic good type named Dwarend. Now, Dwarend was she was born from she was initially an idea from the mind of a lonely little girl, and she grew in power over the eons, and essentially is able to use the power of imagination. She is good, but she's also chaotic, as Fae tend to be. So she can also be a patron. She is also challenge rating 30, just like Qin. She has imaginary spell casting. She can basically cast any enchantment, conjuration, illusion, or transmutation spell she wants at 6th level or lower. She can cast a 7th level or higher spell of the previously mentioned schools once per day. She doesn't need any spell components or anything. She can have up to 3 concentration spells active at a single time. Also, when the child that created Dwarend imagined her, she imagined her as the perfect queen. So, Dwarend can't be aged at all, neither can she be physically scarred, and when she drops to 0 hit points, her realm temporarily disappears, but 1d100 days later, she and her realm reappear. She also has legendary resistance. She has visionary. Inside of her palace, she's capable of envisioning and replicating the feats of others. At the end of every round, she has access to 1 spell, feature, or magical weapon that someone else used until the end of the round. She also has multi-attack. She can attack 5 times with her rapier, her sword, which does 10d8 magical piercing damage. She can also skewer. Basically, she chooses 1 target and marks them for death. Taking a stance, she thrusts her rapier at the target, and the blade extends forwards to pierce the target, and they must make a challenging dexterity saving throw or fall to 0 hit points right then and there. She also has a parry reaction as well. Another thing she has is envision. Once per day, she can imagine herself as a powerful warrior queen. When she does this, she gains a full suit of armor that brings her armor class to 25. While envisioning herself as such, she loses access to her imaginary spellcasting feature. She does gain a magical rapier and gains a number of actions listed. Basically she kind of has two modes. She can she can have access to just about any spell she wants. Well, enchantment, conjuration, illusion, or transmutation, which is still, that's a lot. Or she can imagine herself as a warrior queen and have like this rapier, attack 5 times in a turn, parry, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, the characters were able to have Dwyrand on their side, and they were able to vanquish Qin once and for all, saving the Feywild. Now, the corruption leaves, and saving the material plane as well. And that was pretty much the end of Call of the Grimwild, Blood, Smoke, and Mirrors. Like I said, inspired entirely by this Grimmdark document. So yeah, lots of fun. It captured my imagination to such a degree that I felt I really wanted to base a campaign off of this. And maybe sometime in the future I'll use more from that document to instead of just like the main, like, the Cursed Queens and Qin and Dwyrand. So yeah, that concludes my story. Yep, about 46 minutes. Well, I hope it's worth it. I hope you enjoy these stories. I certainly enjoy telling them. Make no mistake about that. I just tend to be, long-winded and everything, and I wanted to get all of this done today, just to share it all. I didn't want to keep you guys waiting. I have lots of other stories and things to share later this month. So until next time, take care, and I'll see you tomorrow.